Your story matters, don't let it fade. When everything changed, you were made.
Everything changed. It was a Tuesday morning in November 2019. I was sitting in my dark home office with a cup of black coffee in my hand because it was really early, and I had just survived another terrible Monday. The house was absolutely silent. As the youngest of 6 and mother of 4, silence was rare. But our youngest had just went out to college. We had done it. Our 2 oldest had graduated college and were working, and our 2 youngest were in college. I was supposed to be feeling accomplished. But instead, I felt depleted, a little bit lost, uncertain. But on that morning, I decided to do something small and brave as I published my first article on LinkedIn, a professional platform, right? The thing is I was not a writer. I never studied it. I never considered myself a writer. I was just a regular person trying to find my way back in the world. Only at this time, I was absolutely miserable. I had this glimmer of hope, though, because I remembered that it wasn't always this way. So let me take you back 18 years. And this is another Tuesday that I think most people know the date. It was September 11th, 2001. I was driving into work with my 3 out of 4 of my kids in the back seat of my car, and my oldest had just started kindergarten. We'd pulled up to the light, and I was sitting at the stoplight, and my husband called on the cell phone, and he said, "Turn on the radio. Something terrible has happened." When I arrived at work to drop my kids off on the daycare, which was on the first floor of the building, surrounded by windows, I found I couldn't leave. I mean, if planes are flying into buildings, could a car come crashing through these windows? Flashing into, did I say buildings? That's what I meant. Buildings. I don't want something crashing into a window. And I'm standing there in the toddler room, and I just couldn't leave. And I watched my daughter standing there, painting with her little buddy, Jason. And it just changed things for me. You see, I was successful by the world's standards. I was working in the tech industry, cellular, at the cellular boom, creating the next generation of cellular equipment. I was well paid. I was well respected. I even had a hybrid schedule in 2001 before people even knew what that was. I felt valued. So I had to go home and I had to make some decisions, right? I'm not an emotional decision maker, so I made my pros and cons list, talked to my mom, talked to my husband, and we decided we were going to chart a new course for our children. This was not an easy decision. As I said, I'm the youngest of 6. I have 4 older brothers, a sister, 4 boys, and then me. So basically like raised by wolves. I had a good spiral, good with the free throws, fiercely independent. And this independence is what got me through every childhood challenge from the age of 6 on. And it also was that scrappiness and independence that gave me the grit and resilience to work at this multi-billion-dollar company with mostly men and make an impact. This was my identity. Strength, security, but I was also a mother. And I knew that this vision would have to change a little bit. This was not an easy decision. So I've got my family. So I walk into my boss's office and I say, "Are we laying anyone off?" And he said, "Yes, but not you." Because Motorola was going through a round of layoffs. He said, "We're not going to lay you off. We're going to promote you." For a half a second, I was tempted. But then I remembered the daycare windows, watching my daughter paint and having the conversation with my husband. So instead of taking the promotion, I volunteered for the layoff to save someone else's job. I traded paychecks and promotions for service and meaning. And I took that severance and I divided it by 4 children's college accounts to give them the future I wanted them to have. I devoted myself to the family, volunteering, and leading community projects. So now let's pop back over to 2019. I had at some point returned to the workforce. It was hard. The transition back to work was hard, but it wasn't the work that was hard. I had been doing that all along. What was hard was the way I was being treated. I was showing up, doing my best, and the harder I tried, the less valued I felt. I wasn't being seen. I wasn't being appreciated. And I was like, how had I fallen so far? The glimmer of hope that I had was remembering I had been valued. I was valued at Motorola. I was valued in my family. I was valued in every community project that I worked on. So I listened to the voice that said, "There's a better way." I had just returned from 3 conferences, and there was a message that ran through all 3. People matter. So I listened to that and I remembered it. And I said, you know what? I have to write about this. So I wrote an article, and that's what I published that dark morning. It was called People Matter, Lessons Learned from HR Tech, Boise, and Chicago Startup Weeks. And that's when the magic happened. Out of nowhere, people on LinkedIn, this professional platform, started commenting and resonating. The first comment that came in was from an HR tech leader that I had met out in Boise. And she said, "Thank you for talking about the grit that's needed in the startup world." And then I heard from a guy I used to work with at Motorola who is now living in Japan. His name was Mac. And he was thankful to hear from a trusted voice in the United States about what was happening in the startup world. And then strangers, people I didn't even know, opened up the conversation. So from there, I wrote 3 more articles, 1 a month, December, January, February, and I was about to write that one in March. Well, March 2020. I think we all remember that too. And why does it take these massive world things to change things for me? But suddenly the world was feeling how I felt. I wasn't alone. We were all uncertain. We were all starting over together. 2 days after being let go from my job, I'm walking around the lake and I hear the voice. And the voice says, "There are vulnerable people who are lonely and cut off from their family and friends. I want you to teach one. Teach one person how to use Zoom, and then encourage them to teach one more." So I did what I did best. I pulled together community and I partnered to scale the effort because I wanted to teach more than one. One person donated a logo, another person donated a platform. and another, they all came on board. And then I wrote an article because that seemed to be the thing to do for me at that point. From there, things grew. A friend reached out in April of 2020, and I partnered with her to develop her breast cancer nonprofit. She had stage 4 breast cancer, and she wanted to empower women to learn their breast density, learn their screening options, and self-advocate. Women's health. I'm in, right? So we took the lessons of her experience. She did not want her story to become my story or your story. We took her experience and we created the mission, the vision, and the values. And then we took my experience and we created the strategy, the messaging, the programs and partnerships. And soon we had our first event in February of 2021. This little ragtag team of volunteers and partners had 750,000 impressions on a one-day online event. We did it. We took that impossible and made it possible. I grew my own voice in that time. My LLC, I support others as a strategic partnerships leader. I became a women's health advocate. And I also co-authored 3 books and started writing poetry. I am not a poet, just once again, like The Voice, right? Soon I was collaborating with global artists, and one artist in South Africa, she created 24 pieces of artwork with my poetry. I've never even spoken with her. This was all online. So from that dark office, I had come back to life. There's a thread that runs through all of this, and as I look back, in 2001, I recognized that values matter. In 2019, I saw that voice matters, and in 2020, empowerment matters. And through it all, community matters. I also saw something else. Every time I was unhappy, I was not staying true to myself. I didn't know my value, or I wasn't living my values. And so that's where my mantra comes from. Know your value, live your values. Know your value, live your values. How do you know your value? Every single person, you have unique strengths, gifts, abilities. Embrace them. These are the foundation of your self-confidence and your self-care and your self-love and respect. Every person, place, and experience changes who you are. I call these the pieces of I, and this is what I named my LLC, Pieces of I. I am different today because I am here with you. You have changed me. And then live your values. Embrace yourself and then live your values. What matters to you? People ask me, how do you figure out your values? Well, what matters to you most? That voice that I hear, the intuition, those are your values talking. That's part of your spirit. Listen to it. It tells you when things are right and when they're off. You know. These are also the pillars that you can lean on when things get challenging, because it takes clarity and courage to live your values. But they're your pillars, and they also prop you up to make things happen that you thought were impossible. One of my favorite collaborations has been with the World Values Day Committee and with US Values Alliance, where we have co-created workshops and tools to help individuals and companies bring their dreams to life. So last year, it's every third Thursday of October, World Values Day, save the date. But we co-created a workshop last year called Activate Your Values. And we had people come in from 5 different countries, and everyone came in with a goal that they wanted to achieve. And then we helped them align the values, help them select what would help them bring their dream to life, to help them believe that they could make it happen. The comments that came back were amazing. I mean, just seeing their faces and having them say, thank you for encouraging me to do what matters most and to think about what matters most. Everyone deserves to be seen, heard, understood, and equipped with the tools to bring your dreams to life. Because when you bring your dreams to life, and I combine them with mine, we're better together. In this time, it's not just setbacks and comebacks. This is also about a mindset shift. I call this the A4 mindset: awareness, acknowledgement, acceptance, and action. Let's start with awareness. Awareness. You really need to notice what's happening. This opens the door to change. So when I'm standing in that daycare, I had to notice and not just ignore it. Acknowledgement. What is really happening? Sometimes the truth, sometimes it hurts, but you have to acknowledge it. You have to name it to tame it. You have to recognize that it's there, because you cannot go to action if you don't recognize that there's something that needs to change. And then what a lot of people get tripped up on is acceptance. It may be hard, but you got to look at the good, the bad, the ugly, the uncertain, and then you got to look at the lens of without judgment. And that's how you open the door to change. And then, of course, there's action. Because the only way to create change is through action. So as I close out, one more conference I went to recently, between day 1 and day 2, I pulled out a note card and I wrote with a black Sharpie, what can I do? And I recognized that through every challenge in my life, I had asked that question. And when I wrote that first article, it changed the way I saw myself. You see, I can be a writer. I can be a poet. I can work with companies small and large. I can help women self-advocate for their health and help them to believe. I can help purpose-driven leaders. I can help individuals to recognize that they have value too. So I leave this question with you. What can you do? What dream can you bring to life and bring your values to help you amplify and elevate it? Because when you know your value and live your values, you not only change your own life, but it ripples out and creates a collective change. Let's do this together. We can do it. Together, you and I can change the world. Thank you.
Your story matters.